Brothers, I am being poured out like a libation. I think we have all heard this phrase uttered, purely tongue-in-cheek, by our dear brother Michael, particularly while scrubbing the dishes, working away. I'm glad that he's back from his weekend away, so we can revel in Paul's words together. I found a distinct contrast in the words in the second letter to Timothy with those of our brother Michael. Paul actually does not say, I am pouring myself out. Paul uses the passive voice. He says, I am already being poured out like a libation. And Paul actually uses the same phrase in the letter to the Philippians, using the passive voice as well. A libation is quite literally just a sacrifice to God by pouring a liquid out. In the ancient Israelite culture, it would have been on an altar in the temple worship, much like burning the flesh of bulls on the altar. But symbolically, Paul is pulling from this image to describe his own life as a sacrifice, his own life being poured out. There's something far more desperate about this. I am being poured out. Paul is not in control of his sacrifice. He's not deciding where, when, how his life is going to be spent, how his life is going to be poured out for God, for the church, for the proclamation. Now, college professors often mark us down for using these kinds of passive phrases, especially if we use them extravagantly or something, claiming that it makes our writing weak, harder to read. I do agree. But I also think when Paul uses it, it doesn't actually make his writing weak. It makes him weak. It doesn't make his words harder to read. It makes his life harder for my fickle heart to accept as an example to live by. He is totally out of his own control, and he chose it. He gave himself totally. He abandoned himself totally to God. And yes, that does put him in a position of being acted upon. Through a mystery of grace, he submits himself totally to Christ. And he even evokes the images of an athlete competing till the end. But what's the result of his endurance? In the present, it's just powerlessness in God's hands. And if we keep persevering in the same grace, God will also pour us out. And he may already be doing that. I think I've begun to experience this in my life as a Dominican. God invites me to continue, and then I lack the courage to increase the silence in my life and face my anxieties and shortcomings. God invites me to persevere, and then my patience runs thin with a certain brother, or I'm just tired because I couldn't keep the discipline in my life to go to bed on time. God invites me to run the race, and then I recognize my apathy in the face of writing yet another paper or committing myself to the prayerful ideal of study that we uphold. I just can't seem to figure it out. God invites us to keep the faith, and we are still here. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen.